Dale joined Ducks Unlimited 2.5 years ago and hasn't stopped giving it his all. Dale came to DU after a successful 30-year career with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, serving his last 4 years as director after being appointed to that position by President Bush. He is a devoted family man, wetlands biologist, avid sportsman who brings a wealth of professional and personal experience to his leadership position with DU and a little bit of an impish sense of humor. Please welcome Dale Hall, CEO of Ducks Unlimited.
Well, thanks for having me. And I kind of like what Lon said. You know, I could look at you, Ron, and say what he said. And you know what? I hope it wasn't lost on you that we had someone standing here that is a Republican, and someone sitting there that's a Democrat, but we talk about the love of the resource, because conservation is not a bipartisan issue. Conservation is a non-partisan issue. It's a quality of life. It is about our total being and what's important to us in our value system. Politics has no place in that argument. We need to talk about how to do things the right way, but party affiliation has nothing to do with good people who want to do good things. And that's my experience over the years, and I hope it's yours, but we're going to continue leading Ducks Unlimited down the path that conservation is nonpartisan. But let me start off here pretty quickly by saying I want to recognize just quickly, I spent 4 years of my life, I actually have 35 years service to my country, and I'm proud of that. But 4 of those were in uniform, and I always like to recognize the veterans in the room. Would the veterans in this room please stand up and let us recognize you? We have some of our regional directors to give you one of our military coins that we would just love for you to take home. So would the veterans please stand, and let's give them our round of applause. The freedoms that we have today were bought at a really high price, and let's not take them for granted. I also want to thank Alliant Energy and the Fendor Construction for all your support. Our corporate partners are critical to Ducks Unlimited getting the job done, because we really don't do anything alone. Everything we do is with partners. So thank you so much for everything that you've done to help us out. And I'd also like to follow up on something Ron did there and recognize Danny Schwartz, Ryan Blasiak, and Jared West from UW, along with Alex Knudsen and Caitlin Cowdery, who are UW helpers. All of you, please stand up. This is the future, folks. This is But I also had the privilege to sit at the table with somebody else tonight. You know, we're celebrating 75 years of Ducks Unlimited history. And 60 years ago, you two people got married, and you two people joined Ducks Unlimited. So Sherry, both of the Sherrys, would you please stand up and let us recognize institutions in Wisconsin, Ducks Unlimited, and thank you so much for everything you have done for this organization. Thank you. All right, let's talk about just a few things that are pretty important to us today. Ron touched on some of them, the politics, but I want to take us back in time just a little bit and remember what 75 years meant and what 75 years ago was. 75 years ago was 1937. We were in the Dust Bowl. The Depression had just gotten over. Banks had collapsed. Wildlife was almost gone because people had to feed their families. They went out to get what they had to eat. Turkey were gone, deer were gone. Waterfowl were being decimated because of either drying up or people having again to eat. And yet in the midst of this, when nobody trusted anything, money was put in mattresses because they didn't trust the banks, hunters stood up and said, we love our waterfowl. And somebody's got to pay because we know it takes money to get the job done. And so we are first and foremost conservationists, and so we'll pay. And they lobbied the Congress of the United States to pass a law that yesterday they could go duck hunting and goose hunting for free, but next year make us pay $1 to buy a stand so that we could go do the same thing that we have seen as our inalienable right up to now. But we understand somebody has to pay. Now, folks, I want to put $1 in perspective in 1937. A bag of flour was a nickel. A whole 5-pound bag of sugar was a nickel. You could get the staples and some beans and fatback and the flour to feed a family of 4 or 5 for a week for $1. And yet hunters stood up and said, it's worth it, it's important, and we're going to do it. That duck stamp is now 78 years old. And we're trying, as Ron said, to get it to where it has the buying power that it had in 1934. Because it doesn't. We need to raise the price to $25 to be able to buy the same acre of land from a buying power standpoint that we were able to in 1934. So we're pushing these bills, and we're getting help from our members of Congress, both sides of the aisle, to help us with NALCA reauthorization, North American Wildlife Conservation Act, with the duck stamp, with the farm bill, with these critical programs, and not just the duck stamp increase, but also the electronic, which is really important. But all of these need to be done pretty quickly. One of the privileges that I had, and Ron and I have talked about this before, when I was the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service, I represented the administration, so when I went over, I kind of had to watch what I said. When I was visiting with members of Congress, it was almost a relief that I could walk in into old Senate friends of mine and old House friends of mine and say, I work for Ducks Unlimited now, and I'm not here as a special interest. I want you to understand that we are partners in financial investment in the future of conservation in this country, and we are the senior partner, and you and the federal government are the junior partner, and I'm here to try and find out why you want to throw that away. Now, I'd like to invest in the stock market, and I would love to get $3 back for every dollar I put in the stock market. That's what you get for your conservation dollars. We raise it at Fora like this, and we put $3 in the pot on the ground for every $1 the federal government appropriates. Inside that same spectrum, we appropriate, in my estimation, approximately $5 billion a year through the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Park Service, Forest Service, the others for on-the-ground conservation. 1 million jobs are created by that investment and our matching of that. 1 million across the country. That 1 million jobs is a non-exportable entity. They must be located where the resource is. They can't go to India. They can't go to Europe. They can't go anywhere else. Those 1 million jobs are United States jobs employing United States citizens. At the same time, for that $5 billion investment in the hunting and fishing industry, guides, outfitters, those jobs pay $15 billion back into the Treasury each year. So not only on the ground are we getting a 3-to-1 payback, in the Treasury we're getting a 3-to-1 payback. Look, I understand deficit and debt, and we have worked, and these folks will tell you, we've said we'll take our cut, but we only want our fair cut. But why in the world would you throw your profit away? Why would you put what's making you money, what's making you jobs, and what's putting quality of life on the ground for everybody out there? Why would you move that out in the name of addressing the debt and the deficit? In my house, if we're sitting at the kitchen table trying to balance the budget, I don't throw those things away that are income. I look at those things that I'm cutting that I can't offset with other monies. So we're going to continue to make that kind of noise in a nice, respectful way, but in a firm way, all across Congress. And I will tell you something. You don't have to worry about your representatives. I will tell you, Wisconsin's not an issue. Ron Kine, Paul Ryan, Tammy, everybody that works in the Congress of the United States from Wisconsin gets it. So I want to tell you that, so that you're not picking on them later, although I want you to keep the fire lit under. But at the same time, understand we have a big job to do, because when they come back after the election, it's going to be what's known as a lame duck session. Almost nothing will go through that isn't unanimous consent. In other words, everybody agrees. If they allow bills to go, they'll have to just cut off any amendments, do all kinds of things in order to get it through. And let me tell you how costly it will be for us on the Farm Bill, on NACA, on some of these other things, if they go into the next session of Congress. If they go into the next session of Congress, these good people have to reintroduce all over. The whole process starts all over with a new Congress. A bill that's there today in the 2-year Congress dies if it's not passed. I'm not willing to give up the progress that we've made, and I don't want you to be willing to give that up either. So let's keep hard at it. Let's support these folks in trying to get unanimous consent for these motherhood and apple pie bills that we need to get through Congress that put jobs out here in rural America for people that need them, and they're good paying jobs, and put the Treasury back on a good step by getting $3 back for everyone that it invests. And as we move forward and we look at the investments that have been made in history, those same people that stood up in 1934 and 1937 with the passage of Pittman-Robertson, we have their DNA. And I am convinced that the people today are just as committed, will bite the bullet just as hard, and will not give up any more than those visionaries did in 1934 and 1937. I'm convinced that we are up to it. I'm convinced that you are up to it. Because I have believed everywhere I've gone across this country, when I go to a DU event, it's power. It is power. Because power comes from the citizenry. And when the citizen conservationist, as spoken by Aldo Leopold, comes to life, nothing can stop us. And we're not after things that are harmful. We're after things that are good. So let's stick together. Let's get the job done. And tonight, you're going to have I met a nice young man a few minutes ago that's going to lead you in an auction. I'd like you to not think about it as buying something. I'd like you to think about it as they did in 1934. We're stepping up to the bar, and we're ponying up, and we're investing. We're putting our money on the ground where it makes a difference. We're putting pressure on Congress not to let things go that are just simple minority partners with us, and we're going to win. So as you do this tonight, think about it that you're taking care of the resource. You're not really buying something. You'll get to take something home, but don't look at it that way. We're investing in the future of grandchildren that we have yet to have born. We're investing in their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. And that's what we're here for, because somebody else came before us and they paid our ticket. It's our turn. And I know we're up to it. So thank you all very much for what you do, and thank you for having me.